All right, I'm guessing we're live here on Facebook. So this is a continuing series we're doing called Q&A in Quarantine. I've been having a blast doing these, and this is a series within a series. This is called Working with a Producer, and we're exploring the different types of producer-artist relationships, the different types of producers. I think a lot of people might assume that there's one type of producer and the myths behind it. And so we've got producer Jay Tooke here, and I'll let you kind of tell your story. We got artist Kenny George, and I'm Chris Mara. If you haven't caught many of these Q&A in quarantines, they're all on our Facebook page. So just plow through there. They're all about an hour long. And as we go along, and I'll mention this a few more times as people come in and out, any question, anytime. This is a Q&A. So, Kenny, you're an artist. Why don't you tell us about your background and where you're from and all that, and then we'll talk about Jay.
My name's Kenny George. I'm a singer-songwriter from a little town in South Carolina called Aiken, right on the border with Georgia there near Augusta. And I got a 5-piece, I guess you'd call it, alt country Americana, whatever the term keeps changing over the years, but band that we've been together since 2007, and yeah, we just we like that kind of rockin' country heavy vibe. I grew up around here listening to my dad and playing a lot of his he liked songwriters and stuff like that, Jackson Brown, Christopherson, John Prine, and cats like that. And then my mom really loved all the Allman Brothers and the Marshall Tuckers and all the great kind of jammy Southern bands. They both loved Skinner and Bob Seger and things like that. And that kind of, when I was younger, that made me want to play music. I wanted to actually be a bass player. And then when I started hearing songwriters and really getting into songs, I was like, I picked up a guitar so I could try and write that way. And then somehow I started a band and we got lucky enough to be doing this a long time and get to make some records and get to work with Mr. Tooke on this last one and yourself as well.
Okay,
but
cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll get it. I mean, since 2007, you got quite a history. We'll get into that here in a minute too. So Jay, what's your story? What's your deal?
Well, I am a Canadian, and I've been living in Nashville for about.
Man, you must have a bad connection. Kenny, I don't think this storm we had yesterday really helped our internet.
Yeah, so. You got getting hit hard.
Yeah, you want to start again? You blipped out on us.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am originally from Canada. Grew up in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. Lived there till I was about 18, and then I moved to Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is a great music town that I often compare to. I always say if you took the talent level of Nashville and the weirdness of Austin, and kind of put it into one pile. A lot of great musicians, a lot of great studios, a lot of just really great art scene in general. And I lived there for about 15 years before I moved to Nashville. And I've been producing records since about 2004.
Okay.
And yeah, that's the Cliff Notes version.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And my name is Chris Mara. I own Welcome to 1979, and I guess first and foremost, I'm a recording engineer, is how I like to phrase it. And then the other things I do revolve around that or stem from that. And I met these fine gentlemen working on Kenny's project. So Jay produced it, Kenny's the artist, and like I said, there was a lot of work, I'm assuming, happened before you guys walked in the studio with me. So Kenny, let me ask you this. You said you were in this band since 2007?
Yeah, we started, I used to live in Alabama, and I had a band there. We were just kind of a bar band. Mr. Borowski's in the chat. But we all wrote and stuff like that. We never focused on doing our originals much. And then moved back here to Aiken and kind of wanted to do something similar, just get playing musically, and do it more kind of focused on what I wanted to do. So I started the Kenny George band. I think we called it Kenny George and the Special Guest Band because we just never knew who was going to show up to play at the time or who could make it. But and then really just we started a few years into that, just kind of buckling down and writing songs, and where I started buckling down and writing songs and getting from my guys encouraging me to bring them to them and stuff like that to play them. And that's really, it took us a while. I mean, we always had kind of a sound we played, but it took us a while to really kind of develop the I guess the texture we wanted to have as a band, sound wise, live, and the attitude and the feel and things like that. And that's ever evolving too. But yeah. So sorry, I kind of rambled on there for a minute. But
how many times have you been in the studio? Or how many times have you recorded prior to this record?
We did Gunshy was our first studio release, and it was a 7-track EP, six-track EP. Then later we added another track, like a bonus edition, I guess you'd call it. And then we went back in and did Borrowed Trouble, which was our first full-length LP. And in between that time, I won a songwriting contest at Zach Brown's Southern Ground in his social club in Sonoya. And that got us 2 days of studio time at Southern Ground Studios in Atlanta. And when we got there, we kind of got snowed in because of that whole ice apocalypse and all that happened. And we recorded a few cuts for that, but we were just about to put out Gunshy, so we couldn't really do much with it, and we shelved it. And then after we finished Borrowed Trouble, and our right after that, about 3 months after that record, our original drummer passed. And then those were the last recordings that we had. So we went back into the studio where we did Gunshy and Borrowed Trouble with Sean Guest in Digital Halo Studios. Excellent place to record. I've worked with Sean for a long time. And we took these tracks that we had done at Southern Ground with our old drummer, and we layered them up, and put fresh guitars and tweaked them and got them sounding good, and kind of put this here and put that there and pieced together an EP. And then at the end of that EP is where those 2 demos for 25 Hours Yesterday and 2 more songs about heartbreak were coming from. When we were finishing that was when I was writing those songs. So that's kind of the studio timeline leading up to where we are now, I guess. Okay.
And had you worked with a producer before or self-produced?
Just really working with Sean is about the only, early on he was really taking the reins, and most of the time, he's been the guy that's produced this. And so this was a new step, but it was also a new method of recording what we did there with you guys, and what Jay wanted to do and what we wanted to do. So it worked out really well that we were kind of had the same thought process on how to record the record, at least.
Well, Jay, why don't you walk us through how you met with Kenny and your process and kind of the pre-production phase prior to the studio? Because I think a lot of artists, might have a misconception of what a producer does. And one of the things I'd like to showcase in this series, within a series, is the different types of producers. So why don't you walk me through your process and how you got a studio ready?
Well, this is actually a lot different than a lot of projects that I've been a part of. Randy Borowski, the drummer, and I have been friends for a while, and I was on tour in Europe, and he sent me this video of the guys playing 25 Hours Yesterday in a bar, because I think Randy had just started not long before that. And I really dug the song, and I really, really dug Kenny's voice a lot. And I hit him up immediately. It was like, who is this, and what is this, and what are you doing? And I was really excited about it. And we just started a conversation, and kind of got a timeline together. And because the guys are in South Carolina, my schedule, neither of our schedules allowed really for us to be in the same room together. So the first day that Kenny and I and really everybody else, the rest of the band met, was the day before we came into the studio.
Yeah, we hung out at the Airbnb.
Yeah, yeah. And but what we did is I had Kenny send me a bunch of songs, just work tapes, and putting the phone in the middle of the jam space kind of thing, and just sending me what they had, and we went through everything, and we did a lot of it over the phone and just kind of talked about it. There wasn't a whole lot of for me, like certain projects, like sometimes there's a lot of reworking of the songs, and like you and I have worked together enough, Chris, that I like to kind of mess with the arrangements a little bit, but there was really not a whole lot that really needed to be done. I knew the guys could play really well together. That first video that Randy had sent me, the band was tight. Everybody sounded really good. It sounded like nobody was stepping on each other and whatnot. So a lot of it was just done with me listening to the various tapes that Kenny sent of things that they had that they were rehearsing, and then it was really just a matter of getting the guys into the room and just kind of seeing what would happen. I really wanted to capture the sound of what the band sounded like, just the five of them playing together. Because if phone audio in a bar can make a band sound good, when you put a bunch of good microphones and actually spend a little bit of time in a studio, that you're going to be in pretty good shape, I think. So a lot of it was just, getting everybody, once we got into the room and we got everybody comfortable and set up, it was, working with everybody individually and just making really small notes to a band of guys that really have big ears. I mean, you can tell that everybody really listened to each other, so it was really just kind of waiting for that magic take to come through, and I was very, very happy and very pleased with everyone, because I know that you guys have been in the studio a little bit, but it's an entirely different process when you hit record and everybody's playing live, vocals and everything. I mean, that's a whole other thing, and you guys really delivered in spades, and it really made my job very easy, because then I just had to listen and make small suggestions and make sure that everybody was really paying attention to what everybody else was playing, and I think the result was really good. It was really great.
So Kenny, then, I mean, you obviously are studying the craft of songwriting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm assuming that, and correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, because I am assuming a lot, because I, as the engineer, was not involved in any of these conversations, right?
Yeah.
Jay and I talked about sounds of the record, and I'm guessing that came from your conversations, right? But Kenny, you've been studying songwriting, so I'm assuming that's why the songs didn't need to be tweaked a whole lot, because you're, studying the craft of an intro and what a turnaround is and what choruses are and really writing choruses, right?
Yeah.
Did you say to Jay, look, I don't want these songs touched, or Jay, did you say these don't need to be touched?
I don't think no, I don't think I ever said anything like Jay. I don't things to be touched. I'm recalling a few times where we did some pretty, like Jay would be like, we need to put a tag here, or we need an extra, just a guitar dime right here to fill it out, and we put it in there and it would sound great. Or the thing that's coming to mind right now, a really cool moment was when we were doing 25 hours yesterday, and we were trying to figure out what the hell we were going to do with the pedal steel on a particular part. And I was like, I'm going to go outside and have a cigarette, and something cool is going to happen or whatever. And I walked back in, and they had hooked up the neutron pedal or whatever it was, some kind of that phase.
Yeah.
And center, while I was outside, it couldn't have been 30 minutes. It just laid down the solo that's on the record, And it was, I remember the conversation was before I went outside was, let's get out of the box, that kind of thing. And I think that's more so, I think is even as good as any songwriter is, or as good as any musician is, I feel like you never really know what something's going to sound like until you're in the studio, until you hear it back and it's there. You can sit there and imagine it, say, well, I've done this. And try to put yourself in, you know, previous situations and stuff. But like for the most part, I mean, just as far as going in a new process, like we were, you know, the only thing that we knew we could do is try to figure out the best parts we, you know, and get them as tight as we could. And we rehearsed our butts off for weeks before we went up there because we had some big shows lined up around it too. And I felt like we hit it at the right time with playing like 3 really big, good shows with great crowds, and we were super tight and they were high energy, and it was all original shows. It wasn't like a grinder bar gig or something like that. And then we came up to Nashville and we were just ready, you know, to get in there and give it our best. And Jay made it like he said, you know, we didn't really meet till we got up there. We had a lot of phone conversations, but it was, for me at least, it was really comfortable right off the bat. I know my way to deflect with awkwardness is through humor, so I'm sure I made some other people uncomfortable, but I was fine. So,
so what kind of things, Kenny, did you and Jay talk about on the phone, and then to decide he was a producer you wanted to work with, if you recall? Let's going back a little ways.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was right after, because it was that home team. We were playing at Home Team Barbecue, that video down here in Charleston, and they have a great sound there. But you know, like you said, it's still just a bar. And he liked the songs, and I liked the fact. And Randy told me about him, and I've, you know, listened to the Steelwoods and all that stuff, and dug his drumming. Then Randy really started telling me about Jay and what a cool dude he was, and that he had sent him the song, and that he loved the live sound, which is, I love our records and everything, but I always felt like we were, even on our live record, you know, just trying to get that fullness or that richness, but it still being that kind of raw live feel. And that was one of the first things we talked about, I think, was wanting to do it that way. And I was like, all right, well, we're already on the right path, you know, so. Yeah. At least in my mind, we seem to think alike on that. And yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Jay.
I really think that this whole project was really the perfect storm. You know, like you were talking about you guys having to do those shows before you came to town and whatnot. But I mean, it was really a culmination, I think, of like-minded ideas and people having the opportunity to get brought together in something like this, because I love making records, whether I'm playing on them or whether I'm producing a band, where I can put 4 or 5 people in a room and really make that a thing. And because there is an art form to being able to play and translate songs cohesively live, as opposed to spending, you know, we could have spent a month and recorded the drums one day and then like really sat down and painfully agonized over bass parts and guitar parts, and then just like, hey, can you roll that steel solo like 27 times so I can carve it up later, you know? And that's it was definitely, all of this was definitely you know, the stars aligning, and I think that's why Kenny and I hit it off on the phone so quickly when we started talking about this, is that I knew immediately I could put that band in a room and it would sound great. And if we got a chance to really focus in and just pick apart and just trim the fat in really, really small ways, that we could come up with something great. And I think that, and I know that, you know, Kenny had mentioned that he was never really happy with sound that they'd gotten, and it just didn't have that same energy. And this was a good opportunity for all of us. And it really came together in spades.
So then you guys kind of came to the agreement that Jay was to produce like a band record.
Yeah.
Right. Like using you guys and not put it through the Nashville machine and hire a bunch of players and all that kind of stuff.
Right? Yeah. No, it was, that's the whole thing. Is I love the, I just love the personality of my band and the way they play. You know, there's a way Randy plays. There's a pocket I feel like Brooks has, and I mean, you guys are in Nashville where there's just tons of amazing pedal steel players, and I hadn't heard one yet that sounds like Center. Like, you know, they all have their own gear, and I like that. And that coming together live is, you know, is what we wanted to get in there. And we love our other records and stuff, like, you know, like Jay said, but there's kind of a, I don't know, it's like a texture thing or something that we got when we got in 1979. And also just, I think it just accounts for too, just where we are later, you know, in our life as a band. That helps. You know, I don't think we could have made nearly as good a record coming into the same space 5 years ago. You know, of course, you want everything to, you know, your next to be the best. That was when we started talking with Jay. It's like, well, since we haven't even been in a room together, let's do an EP. But yeah.
And then from my standpoint, you know, the conversations that you guys had, as you had them, Jay and I would talk about more of the soundscape, because that's, you know, that's how, you know, speaking to artists that are looking for a producer engineer combo, you know, that's kind of the division of labor where Jay takes the time to talk to Kenny about their relationship and Kenny's goals, sonically and otherwise, and then Jay and I talk about those sonic goals as I'm a recording engineer, and then I translate that into what microphones to use in the process, and Jay kind of clued me in on to, we're going to track at 79 and then mix at his studio and the logistics there, so everything flowed, and then obviously all of that has to happen on a budget. So we talked about time frame. So you guys talk big picture, and then Jay and I talk kind of nuts and bolts.
Yeah.
You know? And that's how it's all that planning ahead of time that makes a record work, you know. And you guys were really, from my memory, on the same page of, you know, you mentioned taking a cigarette break and working on a steel part. You guys had budgeted in time to get creative instead of just come in and you're walking, you're under the gun. We didn't have 2 weeks to make a record, but, you know, I don't remember ever being overly stressed on getting it done. I mean, we were on a time frame, but Jay and you guys had talked enough about budget ahead of time, I'm assuming, to budget accordingly and have time to do that and have time to kind of have a maybe like a bad half an hour and recover later that day, right?
And to, you know, to not to do what we were talking about earlier, but you and Jay as well, just I've been telling everyone when I talk about the process or anything, just the going up there and doing it, is like, y'all made it, everyone at the studio, Jeremy too, and like everyone that was working there or anyone that we crossed paths with at the studio, it was just such a relaxed, chill vibe that all you had to think about was the song. So, you know, you weren't worried about something else or whatever. And it was just a really nice, the focus was good. The vibe was good. And that's, you know, you can tell that you guys put thought and time into that. So that's nice. I don't know. That's all I got.
Well, and I think it's a producer's job too to know, you know, as you get to know an artist that you're working with, to kind of feel out their vibe and what they like and how they, you know, just to kind of, because if we'd gone to, I mean, umpteen different studios, I just don't think it would have been as good. I mean, I'm a big fan of 79 and a big fan of you, Chris, and you know, we work very well together because our brains seem to be linked in this great way that I don't even really have to say anything and you're already on it and doing it. And that makes for a really great work environment. And another job that the producer, another hat that the producer has to wear is picking the personnel. And a lot of times, you know, that does come down to, sometimes you do have to bring a band in, or, you know, like other players to, you know, to do things, or, you know, just knowing the right studio or the right engineer and knowing the right vibe to come into and how to make everybody comfortable, because there should never be, and it's not always this perfect, but there should never be anything that just kind of stops the day and ruins the fun, so to speak, you know? And you know, we've all been in situations, I think, where it can get a bit tense, and, or, you know, maybe somebody that even taking a risk and trying a new studio, and you don't necessarily know the personnel all that well, and you don't know what's going on, and that can really turn around and bite you in the butt, because you spend, as the producer, you got to spend a lot of time, I don't want to say shielding, but just sort of trying to keep everybody on an even keel, so that there's, because sometimes personality, somebody could just be having the worst day and whatnot. But I mean, overall, I mean, you're part creative, and you're part hiring an HR manager, and you're part peacekeeper, and occasionally babysitter and different things. And but it's nice to get that, when you can get a read on people and you can just really nail it on the head, and find a spot and people to work with. It just really helps the project come through. And I think, again, like, this is one of those projects where it was just all the boxes were checked, and it was a fun couple of days,
Yeah, and Jay, you're real good too. Like you said, the kind of like managing the vibe. And I'm going to just make it for instance here, because I don't think this might have really happened, but if Kenny's kind of hitting the wall vocally and starting to get frustrated, you see that before it happens, and say, hey, that's great for right now. Let's just switch to fix some bass stuff, or do some percussion overdubs, and before frustration sets in and gets inside your own head, and then you come back and say, hey man, let's go back to that song and just hit that one more time. What the heck? Let's see if we can beat it. You know what I mean? And it's not.
I think there actually was a situation like that. With next time I see her, because it was the last song that we did the first day, and like after the second take, Jay was, you can do one more. Like, we're gonna do one more, but you're gonna do this again tomorrow. Like, come in fresh.
Yeah.
That was his exact tone, but that was the way I read it. Like, it was like, and I was like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, I get it, because we'd been at it for like 10 hours at that point or something. I don't remember what it was.
And there's time allotted for that tomorrow. Jacob's got a good question here. I was going to tell people, just go ahead. This is a Q&A. We can talk about the creative process. Jay and I are both engineers. We can talk technical stuff, whatever you want. Jacob's got a really good question for Jay here. How do you find a balance in taking time to explore songs creatively in the studio versus getting the recording down in a set time frame? That's an awesome question, Jacob.
That's a really good question. Man, it's just, man, like, it's really just about, I just kind of hear a song, and just for instance, going back to the beginning of this conversation, like hearing 25 Hours Yesterday, that song, it's, when you've got really good songs, it really doesn't matter what you do to produce them or dress them up in a way. Like, Kenny with an acoustic guitar is a show that I'd pay $50 to see any day of the week, because the songs are really great, and you don't have to dress them up and sort of turn them into something that they're not. So
I appreciate
generally speaking, like let's use Radiohead as an example. I remember reading, and this is an article that I took a lot from. It was Nigel Godrich was talking about working with Radiohead and how he approached the studio. Because I remember hearing OK Computer, and just my 21-year-old mind had no idea how they could even begin to start making a record like that. And he wrote in this article that he came in and he just sat down with Tom York, and they he just played the songs to a click with an acoustic, and then they just built everything around it. Mm-hmm. And those songs are masterpieces. I mean, so all of and it just comes down to, if the artist is willing to explore, that, and I use that as a pretty hard left version of being creative, because I mean, those guys really push the limits on everything, and they're not afraid to mess around and try anything that is going to make an interesting sound. And that to me just instantly opened it up, because I always grew up playing in bands where, you just hammered out what it was going to be in the basement, and you never really knew. I mean, I don't think Radiohead sat down and made Paranoid Android in a room and went, yeah, this is great, let's go cut this. There was a lot of time and a lot of things that were into that. And that's, that is the difference between how we made Kenny's record versus that sort of thing. But it really just comes down to the song. And if the song is good and you want to get, you want to really explore some and push the limits sonically of what you can do. I think that it's just a matter of taking the time to allow yourself to do that. Or if you just want to make it a little more stripped down and maybe, I don't want to use the word palatable, but definitely something that may translate a little more mainstream. So it can turn out to be a bit of a chicken or the egg kind of thing. It just depends, while you're making it, how much time you got to make the record, and really, the pre-production side of how much time you take within pre-production, and just knowing if you want to get really crazy and weird with the song, or if you want to just keep it more up the middle. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and you can jump in, Kenny, too.
No, I was just gonna say, from an artist standpoint, what we did with these was like we just kind of like, it's 4 songs, so we got a space and we tried to like 2 or sometimes 3 times a week, or just as much as we could get in there, and we would try different stuff, just sit there and bang it out there, as much as we, like we were saying earlier, of course you can't get we tried to do most of our exploring in the rehearsrsal. I guess would be a good way to put it. But that was, that also helps you get tighter too. But I think it's all situational, as to what you're doing, what kind of, like Jay says, what's the song, and that's where it all comes from. So,
Yeah, and Jake, as an engineer on these sessions, my work is to getting the sounds for the first hour or so, and after that, I'm kind of just maintaining that and going with the flow and doing the technical stuff that these guys are coming up with in real time. So that allows me to kind of watch this stuff. And what I see Jay doing to manage the time is, 1, having the right schedule to start with, and 2, coming in with the song structure, generally the tempo and the key, so you're not messing around with that for an hour, with those basics. And then I saw Jay, like, some ideas will start flowing, and he'll just kind of like thin the herd right away and like, let's work on these 2 ideas. And I don't know if Jay does this or not, but I could see like him like set a clock. It's like, okay, let's run on this road for like a half an hour. Is what it felt like to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, you're not wrong, because there definitely comes a point you just know after doing this for a while that you can burn so much time just beating an idea into the ground, and you just kind of know, it's just like, all right, I have a feeling this is going to work. I feel like, because I tend to have a vision for, as soon as I hear a song and I connect with it, I know the end game. I can hear it mixed in my head. I can hear sonically what I want it to do. I want to know. And sonics for me are so much about, they also translate the emotion of what's happening too with the type of music and the way it is. And, it's very evident from just think about heavy metal as a rule. I mean, heavy metal is a couple of positions in a pentatonic scale away from really being country music, or like fast bluegrass. You know what I mean? It's just different tones, right? So, if you listen to an acoustic version of a Metallica song, it's kind of cool, but it's not great. But you put back it out of the car, you're going to go 90 faster than you know what you're doing. You know what I mean? So that's another part of it too, and that's why it goes back to picking a personnel, picking the people that get it. I mean, Chris and I hear music the same way. Everything that we've ever worked on, I've never had to go, man, can you fix that? I've just never had to do it, so it's great, and that's all kind of part and parcel. But yeah, it does. I do sort of set a mental time limit of like, all right, we're gonna beat this up, and you just start to know right away. Maybe you pick up the theremin, or you grab something else just to try and fill that space that you're trying in that spot that you're trying to get to.
Yeah, and you're a great communicator too, Jay. I've heard you hit the talk back and say, look, for instance, either one of those endings is fine. Let's just pick one, because we have another song to record, and that's a bigger deal than which one of these 2 endings, right? I mean, not in a complicated way. And then everyone goes, oh, right, the producer isn't not caring about the outro, right? He cares about getting the next song recorded, and you know what I mean? And then you're communicating the bigger goal, and that way everyone's still in it to win it, and everyone still has the same goal, right?
To kind of the other side of that same coin, I guess, is one of the cool things about doing the record this way. I mean, in 2 days live in the studio to tape or whatever, was it's that moment, you know, it's that it's not, we didn't sit there for 6 hours and go, oh, what's this guitar solo need? Whatever. It's like, this was this song at this particular time, you know, and that's, I don't know, that always appealed to me. Like, that's, to me, is what makes it a record, I guess. But like I like that aspect of it, and the, you know, leaving some of the scars or whatever you want to call it. It's what makes it, gives it the personality. A lot of it, I think, that we were looking for.
Yeah,
there's so much personality and human qualities all over that record. Like, I had to fight because I spent so many years working in the pop genre where you pull up Pro Tools and you just fix everything and you put it on the grid and you do things. And I really love the human feel of, you know, everything is not perfect. There's things flamming everywhere, but you guys, the band just sort of moves ahead like a freight train, and you have a sound, and that is the sound, and it's great. It was tough to, you know, to be a couple times where, you know, the kick drum and the bass would be not quite where they should be, and I'd be like, yeah, just fix, nope, undo, we're good, let's move on. And it sounds like people and it sounds good, so let's just leave it alone.
Yeah, we'll play some stuff here in a minute. We won't all just be arbitrary. But Andrew Jones here has a really good question, and I don't think it'll fit on there, so I'll read it. How much time research should a producer spend on getting to know the artist in order to make the process work? Do you dive into their entire discography, or do you just come in with a clean slate and get a feel for it on the fly?
Man, it really just depends. I like to come in, I like to have an idea of where the artist has been. I generally don't check things out until I've had a time to talk to the artist a couple times on the phone. And then I'll go back and listen to their catalog and kind of see what they're all about, and compare that to maybe where the new songs are, and see if, you know, say they've got 3 records out before that and I happen to be coming in to do the 4th. I'll see if there's a progression there. You know, like there's so many bands that you listen to, like, you know, let's say the Foo Fighters, right? You listen to the first thing Dave Grohl did by himself versus the last record. I mean, you know, that's 10 or 12 records or whatever it is. And they're all completely different. I mean, but they still sound like the Foo Fighters. So doing that, I like to see, because I have a way that I will hear a project once we started listening to songs and sort of thinking about, well, this is how I would advance, you know, compared to where you were versus what you may want to sound like now. Now, as far as like time getting to know an artist, that varies person to person. Some people you click with their way, and you know instantly that it's going to be a lot of fun, and that, you know, once you've had a chance to just sit in a room, like a lot of times I like to go meet artists for coffee or something and just sit and talk about it and just see if we click, you know, see if personality wise this is a thing that's going to work out. And then, you know, if I think, yeah, this might be a good fit, let's see how it goes. And then we'll get together and we'll sit down in my mix room and we'll listen to some songs and kind of see what they're into. And I'll talk about ideas that I hear for them, and just see, you know, we'll just kind of bounce that off each other to see how it goes. And, you know, sometimes it's I've even gone as far as to, well, let's maybe just go ahead and try doing a song together and see how that goes. Because I've been in situations where I've walked into starting a record and, you know, I've had 3 weeks budgeted to go do something and with an artist, and 4 days into it, I want to leave. You know, and that is kind of in the earlier days of when I started, and you know, because this is just a constant learning process and everything. So I think it's really important overall in getting to know someone and getting to know the artist and getting to know how they work on a creative level, you really need to get to know the core of the person. And sometimes with, like with the sake of Kenny, like Kenny and I immediately hit it off on the phone, and we both come from a love of Wilco and bands of that kind of ilk, and that's sort of like being a Beatles or a Stones fan. I mean, kind of know this dude's into Wilco. Yeah, we're probably going to get along because I think they're really great. And you know that 80% of the things that you're going to want to listen to, and the way that you guys, the way that he listens to music and the way that I hear music and the way I interpret things, that those ideas are going to be, we're going to be like-minded in a lot of ways. So it really just comes down to a case-by-case scenario, because sometimes you meet somebody and you just don't click. And whether you're entering into an afternoon to go somewhere and just demo a song, or you're going to take a month because you want to record 15 songs and you want to really get into it, I mean, you have to know that you can get along with this person. You have to know that you can communicate with them, because once you're in it, you're in it. And it can be, and if it's not any fun, that really translates on a lot of levels, is that you don't get as good an end product if you're just constantly butting heads, or you can't find a way to communicate with someone, or you can't, you've suddenly lost the ability to have common ground and a common vision. And then everything just goes out the window, and you just start throwing stuff against the wall, and people start having fun and just go, yeah, that'll work. And then you move on. And then, you're kind of left with something that you're maybe not as proud of, So it's about the best way I can answer that.
Yeah. But I mean, hearing you guys talk, Jay, in the studio, I got the impression, like we spent 2 days in the studio tracking, and you did overdubs and mixing, right? But yeah, I got the sense you guys spent as many hours prior to being in the studio as we were going to be in the studio, or roughly, on the phone, or working on the songs, or listening to stuff.
Yeah, Kenny and I spoke on the phone a lot.
Yeah, we did. Kenny, Randy as well. Let me give props to Randy. I know he's going to want them.
Yeah, and props to Randy too. But you did, I mean, you really did put a lot of trust in me, Kenny, and that was, there's, as a producer, there's a lot of pressure for that. And we had a lot of conversations, but like I said, I mean, I knew early on that we were like-minded.
I know this feeling's probably bitten a lot of musicians in the butt before, but from our first conversation, from, me and Randy hopping on a call together, like and who's
Randy?
Randy Borowski, our drummer, the conduit to Jay Tooke. But the first conversation we had about it, and just talking about music, but like you were saying, like we're both Wilco fans. That's it doesn't just become a common thread. It becomes a reference point. It becomes a point of data about what this guy likes, that kind of thing. And then we just kind of hit it off, and like you said, it worked out like just really well. But those conversations were. They were good, but they were really very kind of like the record. I feel like it's less is more, kind of thing vibe. We both kind of had that feel and wanted it to be, just what it became. I guess just the band in a room playing together. So,
well, man, and Andrew, that was a great question too. And I think. The heart of that question to me is, I talk to a lot of artists who think that they just walk into the studio and meet the producer, and it's not that at all, and Kenny and Jay took time to ask each other questions, and if they didn't get the feeling they were the right producer or team or whatever, then Jay would have had enough information to maybe recommend another producer. This isn't right for me because of this, but this person is, and through their conversations, they knew what kind of studio to rent, where to go, who's going to be involved, all that stuff.
Jay, I remember having that conversation, Jay coming to me and saying, all right, well, we have these options, but I want to try this one, and y'all were priority. And Then seeing what worked with whose schedules, because we were playing and Jay was gigging and all that stuff. It's really I'm really thankful and grateful for how many little just moving parts had to just line up right for it to work is the way it did, and it's yeah. So
yeah. Well, let's listen to some stuff. So I've got 2 songs, the demo and the finished product of each one. I've got I got little cliff notes of the song titles. 24 Hours Yesterday.
Yeah, 25 Hours Yesterday.
Or 2 more songs with a heartache. Which one do you want to hear first?
Let's do 25. That's the single that's out right now. We'll do that one.
Yeah.
This is the demo. 24 Hours demo. And I'll mute myself. Sorry, I got to run a bunch of things here. And we'll play it. Let me bring it in here. Sorry. Say 2 more songs with a heartache? Yeah. Here we go.
2 more songs about heartbreak.
Yeah. Heartbreak. Oops. I should rename that. Sorry.
Take me out of this capital city where the neon signs don't all spell her name. And I don't really know just where I'd like to go, but I'm staring at the floor thinking it's time for a change. Thought I'd found myself in my mirror. Maybe she found something in me. But feelings can break and mend or change just like the wind. When you're this close to the bottom, well, it seems like the place to be. I got 2 more songs about heartbreak, 1 more reason to cry. Love feels like a test, I'm gonna fail like all the rest. It's been too much time just talking about all the times I tried. Rainy days used to paint a picture.
So I'm getting pretty good at these Facebook Live fades, so I didn't play the whole thing, but that's a demo.
That's fine.
And
I get awkward as is listening to myself.
And then here, good, I had it spelled right there. Here is the one we did in the studio. And just for technical stuff, we came in and tracked for a couple days at Welcome to 1979. Jay and the band did a bunch of overdubs and mixing after that. So I know we talked about live to tape and everything, but there's a lot of post-production on this too. And I think it sounds great.
Yeah,
so here's
Mac Lee the harp on this,
Yeah. So there was, so you're going to hear what Kenny brought to the table, acoustic guitar vocal, and what Jay and the band and I did do it. Here we go.
Take me out of this capital city where the neon signs don't all spell her name. And I don't really know just where I'd like to go, but I'm staring at the floor thinking it's time for a change. I thought I found myself my mirror, so maybe she found something in me. The feelings can break in me or change just like the wind. And when you're this close to the bottom, well, it seems like the place to be. And I got 2 more songs about heartbreak, 1 more reason to cry. Love feels like a test, I'ma feel like all the rest. I'm spending too much time just talking about all the times I've tried. A rainy day is just to paint a picture.
Yeah, man. I mean, I could hear a lot of changes right away as far as the arrangement. You know, you guys added that solo after the chorus, and to your point, Jay, earlier you said that a song could one of Kenny's songs can stand up acoustic or vocal. Which, listening to the production, I could totally hear him just singing that. Right, the core of it, his vocal is very much intact. Right, but all the elements of the band are in there, which is great. You know, really cool. You got to showcase the awesome electric guitar work. You know,
Yeah, Mr. Swan on there. And
yeah. So, what do you think when you hear that, Kenny?
it's it's strange. It's so cool. It's got such a what are you giggling about, Jay? It's really cool. It goes. I was thinking about another moment because I remember the night before after we tracked like the initial part of it. And that was one of the first ones we tracked too. So like the core of it came out pretty good, pretty, how we wanted it to. And we seemed that one, if I remember correct, we seemed to go through it pretty quickly. And then when it got to the next day to putting in the guitar parts and stuff like that live, it's this great epic kind of thing we're playing. But when it's under the microscope of the studio, we realized that we needed to add something or change something or do something different. And we'd been out and seen Mac Leaphart the night before playing, and it's like, I just thought I heard that Waylon Jennings harp kind of idea thing. I don't know who said harmonica first. Maybe it was Jay, but I was like, as soon as the harmonica idea came up, I was I'm all for it, and that just kind of added a whole new texture to it. And Jay had a great moment too, in that during that song doing those overdubs, getting that awesome solo out of Taylor too. Because that was really, I learned a lot sitting there just listening to that conversation and watching it and stuff like that. But that song's really cool. It's a real special one. I always said that was going to be the dark horse on the record if we ever got to record it, because it sounds like such a little, just the guitar and the vocals. It seems like just a sad bastard song, I guess. But the band really kind of put or something. I don't know. I just really, I love the way it turned out and what we did with it there that, those 2 days.
Yeah. And, it's just fun to hear, like, for me to listen to that and not, I don't know how to phrase it. I don't hear a lot of overproduction. It sounds easy.
I think that was the Telecaster in a Classic 30.
Yeah.
Good old Evie.
There you go.
But it's got to be, it's got to sound like a band, but it sounds very produced at the same time, but not too far as a listener. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, because it's interesting for me involved in a project like this where I do the basic tracking and then, I hear the finished product and not selfishly, but there's only so far it can go before it doesn't sound like what we track anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you don't want to hear it sound exactly the same because, like, what's going on? And that sound, it sounds really good to me, and everything's in its place. but it still sounds off the cuff, and that takes a lot of work. So, kudos, guys, because I can guess it took a lot of like, oh, we went too far, let's go back, right? So there's a line. So
well, and there's also like it also comes from when you've got a bunch of players that still just care about being good at music, you know, and you can hear that with everybody. Is that I complain a lot about sometimes being just in various situations, and the musicians are bored or they've kind of lost that spark, and that, you know, that music for me. And I've worked really hard the last couple of years to get my head around this. Is about that first time that you are in a room with a bunch of kids, when, you know, like with a guitar and a bass or two guitar, whatever it is, that first time that you sit down and you can both maybe play a blues lick and you might be able to solo a little bit, and just that, like, that feeling of, you know, heaven is opened up and just like completely, you know, I get chills thinking about it now. Like, just, it's about that thing. And when you get players like everybody in Kenny's band, and Kenny included, that just still love doing what they're doing, and that comes across, and you can't produce that into anything. I mean, it's I'm very fortunate when I get to work with artists that still have that fire and that energy and that drive, because they want to play as best they can. And you know, you can't teach someone how to have a soul with an instrument in their hand, you know. And that's what a lot of this record has. Is it, you know, it's we'll call it the Rocky Four. You know, you guys trained in the snow, and you you came and you came in and you knocked it out of the park, and it really translates on those tracks. I mean, you know, it was just, and it's literally, you know, is just pulling the faders up and opening the sessions to mix, and it's like, well, there's not a lot of work to do here, because the band has done all the work and everybody's played their asses off. Chris has engineered his ass off, and, you know, you don't have to do it. And you don't have, there's not a whole lot of stuff to do after it. It's pretty, it's satisfying. And you guys, you know, you guys have that childlike energy that I just look for in anybody that I can work with.
I did just think it's been so long since it feels like such a long time. It's been over like 6 weeks since we had a band show, but so I hadn't really thought about this in 6 weeks. But the problem is now that we have this amazing recording of 2 more songs about heartbreak with Taylor's awesome solo. Taylor doesn't always play with us live, so sometimes that's left some wah, and he set a nice high bar there for the ebb and flow of it, you know, on the solo, working with you guys and all that. And I get there, I'm not going to lie, sometimes I poo the bed on that solo trying to live up to Taylor's standard.
On stage, like, look, if you want to hear a good solo, buy the CD.
Yeah. That's what we're playing for. Like, I seriously, we've going back to, I'm a believer this song, like, never really stops growing if you're playing live too. And that's another thing I should mention. Like, these songs, when it got time to go record them, we were playing them at our shows too. And Trial by Fire that way is about as good a time as any to find out what sounds good if you're willing to risk it and to see what an audience thinks, and maybe let yourself be open to that perception too, or how it played. And that might make you feel this way at a certain time, but I always believe that a song can keep changing. So in that one, a lot of times, instead of going the back and forth with the telly and the steel, I just tell Center to take an extra solo on the pedal steel. Because the song's growing, baby.
Yeah. Well, you know, I like to keep this at about an hour, so we're there. But why don't you guys just, you know, speaking to artists or bands, looking at the big undertaking of making a record and all the things we talked about. Kenny, first, how about just a little advice, artist to artist, about entering this strange world of making a record? You know, just a couple of nuggets.
Know what you like. Have your song, like, work your song, but you can't overplay it before you get there. I mean, I guess you can be tired of it, but make sure that especially if you're going in with the band, that you're not throwing something at them that they're they haven't heard or something like that. I've done that to people in the studio. It's not fair. It's not fun. And I apologize to those folks, but really be prepped, be prepared. Make sure that the song that you're recording is something that you're happy with the finished product, not that you're going in to record it because you need to record a song, so you're going to use this one. Make sure it's time for that song to be recorded because it's done and you think it's ready to be recorded. And to what we've been saying throughout this is it's really about who you surround yourself with in this business and many, many aspects of it, and good people, good engineers, like Chris, and great producers and like Jay. And we've worked with a lot of other great guys too, like Mr. Sean Guess. And then those guys, that network that they have, you insulate each other, and that's how you get through it. But just make sure you're prepared, make sure you know what you're going into and what you want to do. And then, just do your research and make sure everyone's on the same page. It's all about communicating. And, because that's what you're trying to do with the songs. You're trying to communicate something to the person who's listening. So if you're not communicating with the guys around you making the record, it's not going to come off right. So, but it's just be prepared and be open and have fun with it. Think out of the box.
That's great advice. Jay, what do you have for artists thinking about walking on this path?
Man, just stay true to yourself. Honestly, the things that really, musically are when you can hear the realism and you can hear the heart and soul and of what an artist is doing. And it doesn't matter what kind of music that you're doing, just stop trying to sound like people. If you connect with a certain style of music or a certain artist, and you're just getting started, follow that path. It's good to emulate in the beginning, but within that, find your own voice, and that's I know that's such a cliched thing to say, but the best music that we all know and love was created by people that just didn't give a shit, and they made the music that they wanted to make. I mean, you go as far back to, the Beatles or anything like that. I mean, they just constantly progress through all these different records. You look at a band like Queen, that think about you think about right now, if somebody walked into my room and said, "Hey, I got this song, it's called Bohemian Rhapsody. I've kind of roughed it up," and I'd be like, "This is the craziest thing I've ever heard." But the thing about it is it's honest, and it is that band is a reflection of what Freddie Mercury had as a vision as a writer, because he stuck to it. And same thing with Kenny. I mean, Kenny, just you sound like you, man. You write the songs and you're going to say the things that you want to say, and that honesty just comes through on everything. And there's a lot of homogenized music in the world, but the stuff that really connects with people is the stuff that's just really honest, and that's what comes through. Even in pop music, like a lot of people give Billie Eilish a hard time, but I mean, she's kind of a bratty kid, and the music comes across as this bratty kid that made this really kind of interesting turn your head upside down pop music, and that's why it connects with people, because she's just being herself. So that's really the biggest advice, is just, don't try to be like anybody else. Find the thing that you connect with when you're writing, and on whatever instrument and however you're coming up with.
I don't think we're coming along.
Well,
cool. Well, that's great. And we got one more question. I think it's great, but I'll just chime in on some advice. I think, my advice to anyone looking to do this is just ask a lot of questions and don't assume anything. I think a lot of big numbers get thrown around of what it costs to make an EP or a record, and I don't know why, but they seem really high to me. And a lot of people will make decisions to not hire a team because they can't afford 25 or 30 grand, and that's not anywhere near what the budgets that we do, and what you heard is nowhere near that, and it sounds awesome. So
I was very pleased when we did our budget.
Yeah.
Serious. Like it was one of those things. Like going into it, everyone's really excited about the idea and working with a great team and you guys. And we did our research, but we didn't know what it was going to cost till they told us. And we're kind of like, oh, damn, yeah, that's you know. I'm just saying, you guys take care of folks. When we, as an artist, I appreciate it. Just plugging. Sorry.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just a lot of people will assume that they can't afford to do something. They never actually talked to somebody and got in a budget. And it's a two-way street. You have to be honest and trust the process. Raylan mastered this. Thank you for chiming in.
I wanted to give her some love. She really knocked that master out of the park. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, but I was waiting for Randy to say something because I know he's watching, and I couldn't remember exactly how to say her name, and I didn't want to fumble through it. So I'm glad she just put it up there for me.
Yeah,
it's really like she did just a killer job.
Yeah, and again, that's Jay reached out to her and said, "Hey, I think you're great for this project," and boom, right? So a lot fewer mistakes get made because professionals have their network and use different people for different jobs, right? We got one more question. We'll wrap up on this. This is a cool one. Ben asked of Jay, how much setup and planning for microphones, processing choices? I think he means EQs and compressors. Do you work with Chris or another engineer? I'm going to say ahead of a session. How does that work?
Generally, I don't let the engineer make a move without my say so, and I'm no, I'm just kidding.
Okay, Rose.
Did I freeze up?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Yeah. Really, it's just talking about. We talk a lot in terms of textures, I think, and not a whole lot with Chris. Other engineers for sure, because you get Chris and I hear music the same way, and I can kind of hey, what are we working on today? Well, it's this kind of thing, and I'm digging the sound of this record and this record. All right, cool. And we may swap out or whatever, but the one thing that I don't want to do is sit there and try and dictate what Chris or any other engineer is going to do, because as my role as a producer and picking the studio and the people that I want to work with is knowing when I work with Chris, we just kind of know what we're gonna do. He gets it, and we're nerds, and sometimes we'll geek out on some microphones and let's try this thing and let's push it really hard into that and make this get weird, and how many other things can we mess up, and whatever. So not that's a long way to say not a whole lot. I mean, when you work in a city like Nashville and there's so many world-class engineers and you can just bring your ideas to the table and go, this is kind of what I need. And he knows it. And Chris and I have a love for old microphones and old gear and things that are crackly and noisy sometimes that you got to hit to make them work. And, that's part of the character, that's part of the whole thing. So.
Yeah. And Ben, it's more of a gut check. I'm like, hey, Jay, I'm going to kind of compress the stuff, on the way in. Is that cool? Sure. Awesome. And then, I know Jay likes his own, like he brings a couple microphones for electric guitars and requests that I use certain ones for overheads and stuff like that. So, and I think any engineer worth their salt, in my opinion, can get their job done regardless of the tool. And if Jay is used to hearing guitars with a certain mic, hell yeah, man, I'm into it, and then there's certain things Jay's like, doesn't matter to me, do your thing, and I think that kind of goes for the whole process, So
and I sit in the control booth and pound Red Bull and watch you guys do just this master.
But at the end of the day, Ben, we swap stuff out. It's like, oh, this song, that's not the thing. Boom, boom, boom. And no matter what, at the end of the day, it's going to be what we want to hear, And flexibility is huge. And it's taken me personally a long time to be super flexible and just like whatever, wherever, whatever I can get my job done, So, but yeah, there's a lot of back and forth, Jay runs a tight ship and he wants to know what's going on. So, but awesome questions, everyone, and you know, I had a blast, and that hour went really fast.
It really. I have one question before we go. Where can I get one of those Nicolas Cage pillows?
Oh, the Nick Cage. My wife bought me that for I don't know, Christmas, and I took it to the studio because I hate it, and it's in more photos.
Yeah,
It's a really ugly sequiny pillow with Nick Cage photo on it, and you run your hands up and it turns red, so people take his eyes out and all kinds of stuff. So, Ben, you're welcome for that question, and thanks for everyone for watching and the questions. And I'll see if I can get you that pillow, Kenny.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
All right, you're welcome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you guys taking the time.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and we're signing off. It was